Hi everyone, welcome to Cyber Witch, your online resource for spiritual development. My name is Orly. I am a Gnostic bishop and I have been studying the occult and working professionally as a psychic for almost 20 years, as well as I'm in training as a yoga teacher in traditional yoga. And today I'm going to be helping you learn about what are the classical 8 limbs of yoga and why understanding these concepts and working on them is absolutely vital for people who have any kind of spiritual or ritual practice. In my observations of reading grimoires and studying occult literature over the years, I have learned that a lot of contemporary occult material is derived from traditions from the East, and that's where a lot of Western occultism gets a lot of concepts and practices from. So, as I have been going through my yoga teacher training, I apply all the things that I've learned from studying grimoires and learning about ceremonial and ritual magic, as well as doing other types of spiritual practices that are even more intuitive based. All of these things can really become enhanced by understanding the 8 limbs of yoga and applying that into your personal practice. So, from learning about these aspects, not only will it help you to understand where a lot of concepts from Western ceremonial magic come from, if that is your background, or regardless, if you apply these into your life, it does make your life better, as well as it helps to build your overall spiritual power and strength in the world as a human, as well as a spiritual being in so many different ways. So, what I'm talking about today are what's known as the 8 classical limbs of yoga, and this comes from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I'm going to go through what they are and tell you a bit about each one and how it can be applied from a lens of contemporary spiritual practice to help you. And then in the future, I can make more videos that go deeper into these topics as well. So, one of the things that the Yoga Sutras mentions is there is a debate about if you are going through these different limbs of yoga and maybe you should be starting at just the first listed ones because they build off of each other in that way, especially when I start talking about the first one, which is yama, and there's the concept of causing no harm. When we have this as a principle in some people's spiritual practice, you can understand how that takes a more important caveat. However, when we are applying this from a contemporary lens in the modern world, we can also look at the other interpretations, which is that all the different limbs of yoga build off one another and help one another. And we can also look at this list from my personal perspective, which is from learning it through a left hand path practice where my yoga teacher is an Agori. So I analyze these texts from a bit of a different perspective than some kind of strict religious Hindu perspective. And we're looking at it from a left-hand path perspective and how everyone can learn from these limbs of yoga. And so when I talk about the limbs of yoga, what most people probably think about is one of the limbs, and that is asana, and that is doing the different yogic postures. That is just one part of the 8. So I'm going to go through the list now and help you understand what are the different limbs of yoga and why it is important for people who are witches or any kind of spiritually aware and awakened spiritual person will benefit from applying these principles into your own life. So the first one is called Yama, and this deals with our morality. It relates to ideas like honesty, respect, and it circumferences the ways that we take action in the world in how we treat everything around us. So, when we are looking at this from a contemporary perspective of what we have going on in the magical world, there is a lot of different viewpoints about this, right? And there's a lot of different ethical codes or visions of morality that people can withhold in their own unique experience. And of course, when we talk about things like morality, it's always in the eyes of the beholder and their unique perspective. What I do find helpful is one of the references that the Yoga Sutras gives is, of course, from the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is preparing for this great battle. And so, how can something like this be possible if you're not supposed to cause harm? Well, some people are warriors. There are people who are fulfilling their karmas, and this is what they have to do in their life. But if you don't have to do things like that, it's better for your energy to focus on what you are supposed to be doing, which is focusing on the truth, on justice, and on an overall understanding of how everything is connected to everything else. So, this principle of yoga is really about what's going on inside of you in how you take actions. And this builds on what I talked about in our video from last week, where a lot of people are doing spells, rituals, any kind of spiritual stuff that is totally based on basically some kind of response to trauma, where people have lost something that they want to regain. They feel like they need power. They feel like they need to do something based on something bad that they've gone through as a reaction to that. And this is perpetuating these cycles of suffering and harm for yourself when you make your spiritual practice this reactionary thing of constantly responding to a world whose nature is suffering. If you're always doing things to try to run away and prevent that or lash out back at the world for this, it will just continue that cycle. And so when you apply the principles from Yama into your mentality of how you're planning what you're doing, you can choose to do other things with your energy that are going to overall be more beneficial to you, to your spiritual enlightenment, health, and ascension, and the world around you by not having your actions be based on perpetuating a cycle that is inherently dishonest, violent, disrespectful, all of those things. So that's really important to understand. And then that takes us to the next limb of yoga, which is called Nayama. And this is about what you have built inside of your mind for how you behave in your patterns, not your patterns of how you treat others, but your patterns in your own life and how that nurtures who you are. So this includes all the aspects of self-discipline, and this also includes things like cleanliness, as well as studying sacred and helpful materials. So when I talk about cleanliness, what I mean by that is not just understanding the importance of physical cleanliness if you are working with the energies around you and trying to curate that to your liking, but also a mental cleanliness. And this has to do with all the thoughts that are going on inside of your mind. So if you have a lot of distractions or negative thoughts that come into your mind, problematic thoughts, all of that creates uncleanliness. And so, for people that are spiritual practitioners, if your mind is full of all this junk, it's going to make it really difficult for you to get things done because, once again, it's feeding into a world that is trying to perpetuate your own suffering by trying to trigger you to react to these really base emotions. But then, on top of that, the entire concept of focusing your intent, which is held within your mind and your spiritual mind when you are doing any kind of work, is very important. And so, if your mind is full of distractions, and they may not even be things that you realize are distractions, it could be what you think you're supposed to be thinking about, but then that thing that you're thinking about really isn't what you should be thinking about. You should be focusing on something else, something that's going to actually help you to do the things that you need to do. A lot of the stuff that comes in people's minds, especially people who are witches, spiritual practitioners, is a really big mess that comes in to try to distract people from their true will, distract you from your purpose, distract you from your connection to the source so you can't get clear information because your mind is constantly filled with all this other nonsense of stuff that you're being essentially coerced and manipulated into thinking about all the time. All these little troubles, stupid drama and problems, all these other things that you are just being essentially provoked to do by all the stuff that you're taking in with your senses as you go through the day. And of course, that includes the influence from others and how that gets into your mind as well. So, when we are understanding the concept of niyama as a limb of yoga, this is all about what is your practice of self discipline so you can have control over these things. What do you do on a regular basis? Having some kind of things that you do as part of a regular practice to build that every single day. Like, people understand the concept of working out and how you need to exercise consistently to be able to have results. And this is the same for all these aspects of spiritual practice. You need to start putting that in and creating discipline for yourself. And that even includes making yourself have time to read. And this aspect of it is very important because when we are studying books that help enlighten us, it changes our entire life in very deep and fundamental ways that we may not even realize while we're reading it. Now, the next limb of yoga is asana, and that is the one that most people are familiar with, which is the different yoga poses or postures that help balance your body. This is really great for anyone that is doing any type of meditation, as well as spirit contact, or even if you're trying to focus on anything in life. Asana is amazing for that because when we are working with our body in the different yogic postures, it moves the energy through our body, and it also helps us develop a very important sense of our bodies to become familiar with that. So our body, mind, and soul has a connection together, realizing like our spiritual stuff isn't just what's in our mind and what we're experiencing, but our physical body is just as important as all our other astral and subtle bodies. So when we do any kind of particular physical work, be it stretching in asana or even doing any other types of energetic physical work that cross so many different traditions, that is preparing you for life to be able to be more calm because you're getting used to holding yourself in these positions that are uncomfortable. And when we breathe into it, it helps us to release that. And this also helps us to psychologically go through situations in life that are uncomfortable. We can get control over ourselves in these situations. And in particular, for witches, this can help people to be careful about impulse control so you're not getting yourself entangled into things that you don't need to, so that you also have the ability to sit and have spirit contact if you're not able to focus, if you're not able to sit in meditation. Doing yoga asanas will help you to get better at meditation. All these things go together and charge up your body to prepare it for doing all these other aspects of spiritual work. And this, of course, is my personal favorite, and that's what I have been studying the most in my classes for school. So I do have a little bit of bias here, but learning yoga asanas really changed my entire life. And it really helped me to get in touch with aspects of my body, aspects of my chakras that I needed to work on to overall become stronger and more powerful and healthier in life. So I definitely recommend people at least try it on a basic level, and you can check out some of the beginner yoga videos that I have on this channel as well. So now we're going to get into the next limb of yoga, and that is pranayama, which is breath control. And this has to do with the cycling and movement of prana, our life force energies through our body, which, as I discussed in a previous video, is not just about the breath, but all these different energetic currents that create our life force energies that gives us physical and spiritual power. And breath control is super important for spiritual practice, especially if you are trying to get into deep states of psychic or spirit contact. Learning how to do different breathing exercises helps to change the flow of your mind, your mental focus, and can help you get into really deep avenues of spiritual exploration with your psychic senses through breath control. It also is very helpful if you are doing any kind of spirit evocation to help you to be calm, to help you to build up your energy, and to help make sure that it is flowing through your body. So there's so many different benefits to pranayama, as well as it will really help you to understand more about the overall structure of the temple of your body by working on your breathing and moving the breath through it, as well as having that control of breath, thus translate into further control over yourself and your own spiritual powers as well. The fifth limb of yoga is called pratyahara, and this has to do with sense control from distractions and the ability to withdraw the mind inward. This is so relevant for people nowadays where we are just constantly bombarded with messages, frequencies, energies, emotions, all this stuff from pretty much every angle all the time that's trying to force us to feel certain ways and react to things in extreme ways that is very mentally destabilizing. So it's so important for people to be able to have this, especially because with the rise of technology, so many people literally have lost the ability to just sit in silence and listen to your own thoughts and to be able to hear your mind and to be able to hear what's going on around you. For people that are in the occult, this is extremely difficult for people to deal with. And a lot of stuff that people do is a reaction to this in a way that is just causing even more sensory distractions. So when you are living your days, it's so important to make sure you create at least a small period of time for yourself to be able to practice withdrawing from the world, to be able to hear your own self without a television playing, without a TikTok going, without any kind of stuff happening to make you feel comfortable, because you can't sit with your own self in mind. If you can't do that, then the spirits aren't going to be able to communicate with you, because all they have is what you have given in your life space to manifest. So it's going to happen through your ordinary reality in any kind of way. And one of the best and purest ways of developing your psychic senses and spirit contact, and this is one of the main things that people come to me in the work I do as a spiritual counselor, is help people figure out like what to do, how to shift stuff around in life to be able to get in touch with your psychic senses, and how to put that into practice of development. And if people are doing something as simple as like taking 10 minutes a day to sit in quiet and remove all your sense distractions, you're going to start really learning a lot more about who you are, what's coming into your mind, what you have to deal with, and a lot of things that you're avoiding. Because in all spiritual work, all this stuff that we're avoiding, that we have to deal with, because those are our past mental patterns that we're trying to overcome. We can look at this in the concept of shadow work and witchcraft, but we can also look at it as burning up our karmas as well, where in this really tantric sense of through ritual practice, when you're able to actually sit with yourself and learn about the things that you really need to deal with, because that keeps coming back in your mind, or you keep ignoring what you're doing because you're always distracted, and then you realize like, hey, why am I always doing magical spells to try to bring love in my life? Or like, why am I always trying to do spells to try to bring money in my life? Is that really the solution to my problems? Just keep doing this over and over again? Or maybe there's a mental pattern that I have and the way that I live my life that is creating these problems over and over again. Well, if you are constantly just going along with sensory distractions to make yourself feel better, then you're never going to get to the root of those problems and eventually just drain your energy from doing these things over and over again. So that's why it's really important to create some kind of time for yourself to be able to do this. And it will also help you become more aware of all the sensory distractions that you've probably desensitized yourself to as well. Now we're going to get into the next one, which is Dharana, and that is a focused concentration on a single point or object to train your mind. This is so helpful in psychic development, in any kind of ritual or spell work, or even just simply being able to focus in your day-to-day life without having things being able to push you off of your course and take you out of that flow state. So this is one of the limbs of yoga, being able to focus on one thing. And so that could be so many different things. In ritualistic practice, we could say that that could be the image of the spirit or the deity or their sigil, or it could even be like a mantra that you focus on this one thing over and over and over again. And through that, it also helps to eliminate the external interference, but then it also takes you to a particular mental direction that unlocks revelations. Practicing dharana is so important to help you in your psychic connection to so many things. One of the main things that people often struggle with in their spiritual work is feeling like they're making contact with forces outside of them. And this is really because our mind isn't able to focus in on that one thing. So that's why having something like an image of what you're trying to get in touch with or a symbol is so helpful and important in spiritual practice. Now we're going to get into the second last one, which is dhyana, and this is meditation and where your mind is able to really flow toward the object that you're focusing on or not, whatever your meditative practice is. But in occult and spiritual practice, there is so much emphasis in Western contemporary occultism on ritual evocation, but then not on meditation. And it's in the meditation where you're able to actually sense and feel the effects of what you're doing in your spiritual work, as well as taking time in your day outside of ritual practice to focus on things like meditation is extremely beneficial for your spiritual health. And this is because of the flow of what is known as the gunas. And these are energetic shifts in our actions and how we live our life. And very much people are very, very fast paced, trying to do stuff all the time. They got to go, go, go. They got to drive. They got to go to work. They got to do all these things, take care of your family, clean up. You never have a second to just stop, especially if you're trying to get ahead in life and doing a bunch of extra things on top of everything else that you're doing. People will not find time to take for meditation. And this is so important because having a balanced type of the different energies in your life will actually help you to maintain flow state in getting work done, to become even more creative, and to develop and strengthen your overall energy in literally every single thing that you do. So having this time in our fast-paced world where you can just calm everything down and go inwards, and you don't have to have some kind of goal. In yoga, there are so many different aspects of meditation and types of meditation and avenues of meditation and goals, but you don't need to have a goal that you set out. The goal should just be to meditate, and you don't need to put a timer on it. Just practice going inward and see what is there and allow yourself to move past those things and go deeper. And also taking notes on it can be extremely beneficial as well, because you're actually now doing the work of the landscape of your mind, of your subconscious, which also affects the world around you with your own energies. And vice versa. So you can see and basically take like an itinerary of your overall spiritual ecosystem by going into meditation. Now we are at the final limb of yoga, and that is called samadhi. So samadhi is a state of complete absorption in the universe, in unity, and it can be related to the idea of achieving enlightenment. Now, there are so many different states and levels of samadhi that we get into through deep ritual, trance, meditation, all these kind of mind states where we've left ordinary reality through some kind of ritualistic or spiritual practice that we're doing, and through meditation. So when spiritual practitioners are doing a spell or something like that, often people will come to me for help because they're like, oh, I don't think this worked, or I don't know what why I'm not getting to where I'm trying to be in my spiritual practice. And really, it is people are not allowing themselves to go into these deep, deep states. And it's because it takes time and it also takes practice of getting there. So we can look at this as you should do work to bring yourself into this deep state. And that is the deep state where you have interaction with spirits in a willed way, not just like seeing stuff out of the side of your eye through the day or having a dream, but to consciously choose that you are bringing some kind of non-ordinary reality contact into your mind. And so when you want to do that, you have to bring yourself into these deeper states of mental awareness. And those are the deep states of samadhi. And that, like I said, it takes time to get into those deep states of meditation and practice of doing that. And then you will have things happen like for me, I often get taken places and I get shown things and I go to other worlds and beings meet with me. And that happens from an ongoing practice that I have of practicing the 8 limbs of yoga. So they all feed into one another. So, like, for example, having breath work practice helps me to relax, to get into meditation. And then the meditation helps me to get into samadhi state because I've practiced meditation. And now I can go deep, deep, deep into my mind because of all these things building up on one another. And so it's really incredible to behold the benefits of the 8 limbs of yoga as applied in a dedicated spiritual practice, no matter what you're doing. And this is something that I personally have noticed those that lack these aspects in their practice tend to have a lot of difficulty and problems in their spiritual work, but also in life as well, and stability and grasp over life and control over life. So all these things are really helpful. And the idea is the 8 limbs of yoga are designed to help us to escape suffering. And that is the nature of the world through developing this very skilled mental and spiritual practice. So I hope that gave you some fun things to think about for today. You can let me know what you gathered from this to apply into your own practice, and if it gave you any kind of ideas. And if you would like to reach me for any of my online classes or my spiritual counseling or tarot work, all that stuff is linked in the description of this video as a resource for you. So you can find all my links for that stuff down below. If you're new, please hit subscribe for new videos every week. And everyone, please hit like so YouTube will continue to share these videos with more people. And please do share them with everyone you know. Thanks so much to all of my channel members and my patrons. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.